The Valeth's parting words echoed in the minds of Alex, Mia, and the others as the alien ship began to ascend into the sky. Its shimmering surface reflected the first light of dawn, casting a soft glow over the city they had rebuilt. For a moment, everyone stood still, watching the massive vessel grow smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with uncertainty, but also a quiet sense of triumph. Alex turned to face the group, his expression calm but resolute. "They're gone," he said simply. "But we're still here." His voice carried a weight that silenced any lingering doubts or fears. Around him, people nodded, their faces reflecting pride and relief. They had faced unimaginable challenges: deserts, jungles, frozen wastelands, ruined cities, and yet they had not only survived but thrived. Together, they had proven that humanity's greatest strength lay not in perfection, but in its ability to adapt, create, and unite. Maya stepped forward, her eyes scanning the crowd. "This isn't just about us," she said softly. "It's about everyone back home, everyone on Earth. What we've done here shows what's possible when we work together. We can take this back with us, show the world that we're stronger than anyone thinks." Her words sparked a wave of energy among the survivors. People began talking excitedly about returning to Earth, sharing their experiences, and using what they had learned to make the planet better. Some suggested planting more gardens like the ones they had created in the city. Others talked about repairing broken communities and helping those in need. The lessons they had gained during the trials weren't just tools for survival. They were blueprints for a brighter future. As the simulation dissolved around them, the group found themselves standing once again in the chamber aboard the Valeth ship. The walls shimmered with images of Earth, vast oceans, sprawling cities, and endless skies. A final message from the Valeth appeared, glowing brightly in the air. "You have earned your place among the stars. Your flaws are inseparable from your strengths. Use them wisely." With that, the beam of light returned, transporting them back to Earth. When Alex opened his eyes, he was lying on a patch of grass under an open sky. Beside him, Mia sat up, brushing dirt from her hands. Around them, others stirred, blinking in the sunlight. It was real. They were home. News of their return spread quickly. Governments, scientists, and ordinary citizens clamored to hear their story. Alex and Mia became symbols of hope, traveling across the globe to share their journey. They spoke not just of the trials, but of the resilience, compassion, and ingenuity they had witnessed. Their message was simple: humanity's potential was limitless if people chose to work together rather than turn against one another. Over time, the lessons from the trials took root. Communities came together to tackle environmental issues, poverty, and inequality. Gardens sprouted in urban areas, renewable energy projects flourished, and education programs emphasized creativity and cooperation. The world wasn't perfect, it never would be, but it was moving in the right direction. Unseen by humanity, the Valeth observed from afar. They had expected fear, resistance, or even hatred after their intervention. Instead, they saw something unexpected: gratitude. Humans didn't resent the tests. They embraced them as opportunities to grow. Watching Earth rebuild itself, the aliens felt a flicker of admiration, a rare emotion for beings who valued logic above all else. Perhaps, they mused, humanity truly was ready to join the galactic stage. Flawed, unpredictable, and endlessly determined, these creatures had proven that survival wasn't just about enduring. It was about creating something worth fighting for. And though the Valeth would never admit it aloud, they couldn't help but feel a small spark of hope, not just for humanity, but for the universe itself. The city stood stronger than ever, a beacon of hope amidst the trials imposed by the Valeth. Lights illuminated the streets, water flowed freely from repaired pipes, and gardens flourished with fresh produce. Yet, Alex and Mia knew that their work wasn't done. The hidden control panels they had discovered gave them an edge, but they also raised questions. Why had the Valeth left such tools within reach? Was this another test, or an opportunity for humanity to prove itself beyond expectations. Late one evening, as the others rested, Alex and Mia climbed to the roof of the tallest building in the city. From there, they could see the full scope of what they had built, a sprawling community rising from ruins. But instead of feeling pride, Alex felt uneasy. "Do you think we're being manipulated?" he asked, breaking the silence. "What if everything we've done, the rebuilding, the repairs, it's all part of their plan to see how far we'll go?" Mia stared at the horizon, her expression thoughtful. "Maybe," she admitted. "But does it matter? We've turned their tests into something meaningful. Look at what we've created here. It's not just survival anymore. It's about building something better." Her words struck a chord with Alex. She was right. No matter the Valith's intentions, humanity had shown its ability to rise above challenges, to adapt and innovate even when pushed to the brink. Determined to confront their overseers directly, Alex suggested using the control panels to communicate with the Valith. "We've figured out how to manipulate their system," he said. "Why not use it to talk to them? If they want to judge us, let's tell them who we really are." Mia hesitated but eventually agreed. Together, they gathered a small group of trusted individuals to help. Using scraps of metal, wires, and salvage technology, they rigged a crude communication device connected to one of the panels. When the message finally transmitted, it was simple but powerful. "We are more than your tests. Humanity is defined not by perfection, but by resilience. We rebuild, we create, and we unite, even in the face of fear. Tell us, what do you truly want from us?" For a long moment, there was no response. Then, the air seemed to shimmer, and a holographic figure appeared before them. A Valith observer, taller and more imposing than any human. Its glowing eyes scanned the group, lingering on Alex and Mia. "You have adapted," the alien said, its voice calm but tinged with curiosity. "You have surpassed our expectations." Alex stepped forward, his voice steady despite the awe-inspiring presence before him. "Expectations aren't enough," he said firmly. "You came here to judge us, but did you ever stop to understand us? Our flaws, our fears, they're part of what makes us strong. We don't give up. We fight for each other, even when the odds are against us." Mia added, her tone equally resolute, "Your tests were meant to break us, but instead, they brought us together. You wanted to see if we deserved a place among the stars. But maybe the real question is this: are you ready to accept us?" The Valith tilted its head slightly, as though considering their words. For beings who valued logic above all else, the depth of human emotion and determination was both perplexing and humbling. They had observed countless civilizations, many of which crumbled under similar trials. But humanity, imperfect, unpredictable, and unyielding, had not only endured but thrived. Finally, the alien spoke again. "Your species is unique," it said slowly. "We underestimated your capacity for growth and unity. Perhaps it is not our judgment that matters, but yours." With that, the figure dissolved into light, leaving the humans standing in stunned silence. As dawn broke over the city, Alex and Mia shared a quiet moment of reflection. The Valith's words lingered in their minds, heavy with meaning. Humanity had proven its worth, not because they were flawless, but because they refused to be defined by failure. Whatever happened next, they knew one thing for certain: the future belonged to them. The city was alive again, buzzing with energy and purpose. People moved through the streets with a sense of pride, their faces no longer weighed down by exhaustion or despair. Gardens flourished in once empty lots, buildings stood strong and welcoming, and laughter filled the air as children played under the newly restored streetlights. It was a world reborn, a testament to humanity's resilience and creativity. But Alex and Mia knew the trial wasn't over yet. The Valith had been silent for days, watching from afar, and that silence felt heavier than any challenge they'd faced before. One morning, As the group gathered to plan the next phase of rebuilding, the ground beneath them trembled. At first, it was subtle, a faint vibration that made plates rattle on tables, but within moments, the shaking grew violent. Buildings swayed dangerously, and cracks spread across repaired roads. Panic erupted as people scrambled for safety. "Stay calm," Alex shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Find cover." He and Mia guided everyone toward the sturdiest structure nearby, a reinforced community center they had built during the early days of the trial. As the quake subsided, the survivors emerged cautiously, their eyes wide with shock. The city they had worked so hard to restore was damaged once more. Walls collapsed, power lines snapped, and water pipes burst. It felt like starting all over again. A young woman named Lisa clenched her fists in frustration. "Why are they doing this?" she demanded, tears streaming down her face. "We fixed everything. Why can't they just leave us alone?" Mia knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Because they're testing us," she said gently. "But we've already shown them we can handle this. We'll rebuild again, and we'll do it faster this time." Her words steadied the group, reminding them of how far they had come. They weren't the same frightened, desperate people who had started this journey. They were stronger now, more united. Alex surveyed the damage, his mind racing. "This isn't just about breaking us," he said aloud. "It's about seeing if we'll keep going when things get tough. If we stop now, we lose, not just the trial, but everything we've built here." His determination inspired the others. Teams formed quickly, each assigned to tackle a specific problem. Some focused on stabilizing damaged structures, while others worked to restore power and water. Everyone contributed, even those who could only carry tools or clear debris. Hours turned into days, and the city began to rise again. This time, though, they worked smarter. Using lessons learned from previous repairs, they reinforced buildings against future quakes and rerouted water lines to prevent flooding. Alex and Mia encouraged innovation, pushing the group to think creatively. When materials ran low, they scavenged clever alternatives, repurposing old furniture for lumber or melting down scrap metal to create new tools. Progress was slower than before, but their efforts were more efficient, driven by experience and teamwork. Amid the rebuilding, Alex noticed something strange. Certain areas of the city seemed untouched by the quake, almost as if protected. He shared his observation with Mia, who agreed it was worth investigating. Together, they explored these zones, discovering hidden control panels embedded in the walls. The panels displayed complex symbols and patterns, clearly designed by the Valeth. These must control the simulation. Alex realized, his voice tinged with excitement. "If we can figure out how to use them." Mia nodded, her eyes narrowing in focus. "Let's test it," she said. Carefully, they manipulated the controls, experimenting until they triggered changes in the environment. Suddenly, the sky brightened, and the temperature warmed slightly. "We're influencing the trial," Mia whispered, awe in her voice. For the first time, they weren't just reacting to the Valeth's tests. They were taking control. Word spread quickly, and soon, others joined in, learning to operate the panels. By working together, they stabilized the city, preventing further disasters and speeding up repairs. What had taken weeks before now happened in days. The transformation was remarkable, proof that humanity could adapt not only to survive but to thrive. Unseen by the humans, the Valeth exchanged uneasy glances. These creatures had done the unthinkable. They had turned the simulation itself into a tool. Humanity's ingenuity and unity unsettled the aliens, forcing them to reconsider their assumptions. Perhaps these beings were more than mere subjects in a test. Perhaps they deserved something greater. The city was coming back to life, piece by piece. Streets that had been blocked with rubble were now clear enough for people to walk through. Buildings stood taller and stronger as the group worked tirelessly to repair walls, roofs, and windows. Lights flickered in more homes each night, powered by the patched-up electrical system Alex and the others had managed to restore. Water flowed steadily from repaired pipes, giving everyone access to clean drinking water. For the first time since the trials began, there was a sense of progress, a feeling that they were truly building something meaningful. But Alex couldn't shake the feeling that the Vailith weren't done testing them yet. He spent his evenings studying the patterns of the environment, just as he had in the frozen wasteland. The alien simulations always followed a rhythm, and he was determined to uncover it here too. One night, while everyone else slept, he climbed to the roof of one of the taller buildings to get a better view of the city. From above, he noticed something odd. Certain areas seemed untouched, almost deliberately preserved in their ruined state. It didn't make sense. If the goal was to rebuild, why leave parts of the city in disrepair? Mia joined him the next morning, carrying a notebook filled with sketches of plants she hoped to grow in the empty lots. "What are you looking at?" she asked, following his gaze toward the untouched sections of the city. Alex pointed them out. "It's like they're waiting for us to notice," he said thoughtfully. "Maybe these areas are part of the test." Mia frowned, considering his words. "You think the Vailith want us to figure out what's wrong with those spots?" she asked. Alex nodded. "Exactly. And if we can fix them, maybe we'll finish faster." Together, they gathered a small team to investigate. As they approached the first untouched area, they realized it wasn't just abandoned. It was booby-trapped. Hidden wires crisscrossed the ground, and strange devices hummed faintly beneath piles of debris. "This isn't natural," Mia whispered, her voice tense. "They set this up to stop us." Alex agreed but refused to let fear take over. "We've faced worse," he reminded her. "Let's focus on finding a way around it." Using tools they had scavenged earlier, the group carefully dismantled the traps, inch by inch. It was slow, nerve-wracking work, but they eventually cleared a path. Inside the area, they found old machinery, generators, water pumps, and even farming equipment, all left behind as if waiting to be rediscovered. With these tools, rebuilding would become easier and faster. But Alex knew this discovery wasn't just about resources. It was proof that humanity could think critically and solve problems under pressure. Word spread quickly among the survivors, reigniting their determination. Teams worked around the clock to integrate the newfound machinery into their efforts. Generators provided power to larger sections of the city, allowing them to light up entire neighborhoods. Water pumps irrigated the soil in empty lots, turning barren land into fertile gardens. For the first time, fresh vegetables appeared on their plates alongside canned goods. Morale soared as people saw tangible evidence of their hard work paying off. Meanwhile, Alex and Mia continued searching for more hidden areas, convinced that uncovering all of them would bring the trial to an end. Each discovery brought new challenges, but also new opportunities. They learned to anticipate the Vailith's tricks, turning obstacles into advantages. By manipulating the simulation's patterns, they accelerated their progress far beyond what the aliens likely expected. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Alex and Mia stood together in the heart of the city. Around them, laughter echoed. Children played in newly planted gardens, and lights glowed warmly in windows. It was a scene of hope and resilience, one that defied the bleakness of the trials. Yet, Alex felt uneasy. "Do you think we're ready?" he asked quietly. "Ready for whatever comes next?" Mia smiled, though her eyes reflected the same uncertainty. "We've already proven we can adapt and survive," she said. "Now it's time to show them who we really are, not just survivors, but builders, creators." Her words stayed with Alex as they returned to their tasks. Humanity had endured unimaginable hardships, but they had risen above every challenge. The Vailith wanted to see their worthiness, and Alex was certain they had passed the test. Unseen by the humans, the Vailith watched silently. Their expressions betrayed no emotion, but their glowing eyes flickered with something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. These creatures had not only survived but thrived, reshaping destruction into renewal. Perhaps the aliens' muse, humanity was more than they had anticipated. The ruined city stretched before them, its broken skyline casting long shadows over the desolate streets. Buildings leaned precariously, their windows shattered and walls cracked. Rubble filled the roads, making it hard to move without tripping or scraping against jagged edges. The air smelled of dust and decay, a stark reminder that this place had once been alive with people. Now it was empty, a ghost of what it used to be. Alex and Mia stood side by side, taking in the scene. "Rebuild," Alex muttered under his breath, repeating the Valeth's instructions. "How are we supposed to rebuild an entire city?" Mia didn't answer right away. Instead, she knelt down and picked up a piece of metal from the ground, turning it over in her hands. "We start small," she said finally. "One step at a time. Shelter first, then food, water, and everything else." Her words gave the group focus. They began scavenging the ruins for anything useful: wooden beams, scraps of fabric, tools, and even bits of wiring. Some found cans of food buried beneath piles of debris, while others discovered bottles of water hidden in abandoned buildings. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep them going. Alex led the effort to clear a section of the street, creating space where they could set up camp. Together, they worked tirelessly, their movements slow but steady as exhaustion weighed on their bodies. As night fell, the temperature dropped sharply. Without proper shelter, staying warm became their biggest challenge. Using pieces of cloth and plastic sheeting they had salvaged, Mia designed a simple tent-like structure. Alex helped secure it using nails and boards they had pried loose from nearby buildings. Inside, huddled close for warmth, the group shared what little food they had managed to gather. No one spoke much. They were too tired to do anything but eat and rest. The next morning, Alex noticed something strange. While exploring a nearby building, he stumbled upon a room filled with old books and papers. Most were damaged beyond recognition, but a few survived intact. One book caught his eye. It was about urban planning and infrastructure. Flipping through its pages, Alex realized it contained diagrams showing how cities were built, maintained, and repaired. He showed it to Mia, who immediately saw its value. "This could help us," she said excitedly. "If we can figure out how to restore basic systems like plumbing and electricity, we'll have a real chance." With the book as their guide, the group shifted their focus. They located a water pipe sticking out of the ground near the edge of the city and worked together to repair it. Alex used his engineering skills to patch leaks, while Mia instructed others on how to test the flow. After hours of effort, water trickled out. A small victory, but a meaningful one. Encouraged, they turned their attention to power lines dangling loosely from poles. Sparks flew when they tried reconnecting them, but eventually, lights flickered on in a few buildings. Cheers erupted, breaking the heavy silence that had hung over the city. But rebuilding wasn't just about physical structures. It was also about trust and cooperation. Tension still flared occasionally, especially when resources grew scarce or disagreements arose. Yet, Alex and Mia reminded everyone that they were stronger united than divided. Slowly, the group began working not just for survival, but for something greater. They cleaned up sections of the city, planted seeds in empty lots, and even started teaching each other skills they had learned along the way. Unseen by the humans, the Valeth observed closely. What they saw confused them. These creatures weren't simply following orders. They were creating something new, something unexpected. Compassion and ingenuity drove their actions, qualities the Valeth hadn't anticipated. For beings who valued logic above all else, humanity's emotional depth was both fascinating and unsettling. As days passed, the city began to change. Streets became clearer, buildings more stable, and life slowly returned to the once dead space. Alex and Mia walked through the emerging community, watching as people laughed and worked together. There was still so much to do, but hope burned brightly now. Whatever happened next, they knew they had already proven something important, not just to the Valeth, but to themselves. Humanity wasn't defined by its failures, but by its ability to rise above them. The group stood on the narrow ridge of ice, staring at the dark water stretching endlessly before them. The distant shoreline seemed impossibly far away, but there was no other choice. They had to cross. Alex took a deep breath, his mind racing as he tried to come up with a plan. "We need something to float on," he said, scanning their surroundings. Broken chunks of ice floated nearby, too small and unstable to support their weight. But then his eyes landed on the remains of their shelter back on the ridge, wooden beams and scraps they had used to reinforce it. "We can use those," Alex said, pointing to the debris. "If we tie them together, we might be able to make a raft." Mia nodded quickly, already thinking ahead. "But we'll need rope," she added, "and we don't have much left." Someone in the group spoke up, a young man named Ryan who had been quiet until now. "We could use vines," he suggested. "There are some near the edge of the ice where the snow melted earlier." It was a risky idea. Leaving the safety of the ridge meant venturing closer to the unstable cracks in the ice, but they didn't have time to hesitate. Splitting into pairs, the group worked quickly. Alex and Ryan braved the icy edges to gather vines, while Mia and another woman, Claire, started assembling the wooden beams. Their hands were numb from the cold, and their movements were slow and clumsy, but they pushed through the discomfort. Every second counted. When Alex returned with an armful of frozen vines, his face was pale and his lips were tinged blue. "Hurry," he urged, his voice hoarse. "The ice is cracking faster." With trembling fingers, they wove the vines tightly around the beams, creating a makeshift raft just large enough to hold everyone. It wasn't perfect. The structure groaned under their combined weight, but it would have to do. As they prepared to push off, Mia handed out pieces of moss broth she had saved. "Drink this," she said firmly. "It's not much, but it'll give you energy for what's coming next." No one argued. They sipped the thin liquid silently, steeling themselves for the crossing. Pushing away from the ridge felt like stepping into the unknown. The water was freezing, and the current pulled at the raft unpredictably. Alex and Ryan used long branches to steer, guiding the fragile vessel toward the distant shore. Waves splashed over the edges, soaking everyone despite their best efforts to bail out the water. Each wave brought new panic, but somehow they held together. "Keep moving," Alex shouted whenever someone faltered. "We're almost there." Hours passed, though it felt like days. The shoreline grew closer, but so did the exhaustion. People slumped against each other, their bodies drained from the cold and effort. Just when hope began to flicker, disaster struck. A loud crack echoed across the water, and the raft tilted sharply as one of the beams snapped. Water rushed in, threatening to pull them under. Panic erupted, but Mia acted fast. Grabbing a piece of broken wood, she shoved it under the damaged section to stabilize the raft. "Hold on," she yelled, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Don't let go." Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the raft scraped against the rocky shore. One by one, the survivors crawled onto solid ground, collapsing in relief. They were safe, for now, as they lay there catching their breath. Alex looked back at the icy expanse they had crossed. He couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. They had faced impossible odds and made it through. Not because they were stronger or smarter than anyone else, but because they refused to give up. But their relief was short-lived. The environment around them began to shift again, morphing into something entirely new. Buildings rose from the ground, towering structures that formed a sprawling cityscape. Yet the streets were eerily empty, littered with rubble and signs of destruction. It was clear this place had once thrived, but now lay in ruins. The Valeth's voice returned, calm but ominous. "This is your final trial. Rebuild what has been lost, or prove yourselves unworthy." Alex glanced at Mia, who met his gaze with determination. They had come this far, and they weren't about to stop now. Whatever challenges awaited them in this ruined city, they would face them together. Unseen by the humans, the Veilith exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. These creatures continued to defy expectations, and it left the aliens wondering if they had underestimated humanity entirely. The frozen wasteland stretched endlessly, a white desert under a pale gray sky. The biting cold seeped into every layer of clothing, no matter how tightly Alex and the others wrapped themselves. Frost clung to their eyelashes, and their breath came out in sharp puffs that vanished almost instantly in the icy air. Survival here wasn't just about staying warm, it was about enduring. Every movement required effort, every decision carried weight, and every mistake could cost lives. Mia worked tirelessly to keep morale high. She reminded everyone that they had already overcome so much. The desert, the jungle, and this frozen world was just another challenge to face. But even she couldn't ignore the toll it was taking. Supplies were running dangerously low again, and the group's energy was fading. People shuffled around like ghosts, their faces pale and drawn. Some began whispering about giving up, their voices barely audible over the howling wind. "We can't go on like this," one man muttered, his voice cracking with exhaustion. "It's too much." Alex refused to let despair take hold. He knelt beside the man, gripping his shoulder firmly. "We're still alive," he said, his tone steady but kind. "That means we're doing something right. If we stop fighting, then they win, not just the cold, but the Veilith. Is that what you want?" The man didn't answer, but Alex's words seemed to sink in. Slowly, he nodded and got back to work. Mia, meanwhile, focused on finding ways to adapt. She noticed tiny patches of moss growing beneath rocks where the snow had melted slightly. Using her knowledge of biology, she identified them as a potential source of nutrients. "It's not much," she admitted to Alex as they huddled together inside the shelter, "but it's better than nothing." With her guidance, the group began collecting the moss and mixing it with melted snow to create a thin broth. It wasn't filling, but it kept them going. As days passed, Alex discovered something strange. While repairing part of the shelter, he noticed patterns in the way the snow shifted and settled. At first, he thought it was natural, but the more he studied it, the more he realized it wasn't random. The environment was changing subtly, almost imperceptibly. At regular intervals, it was as if the Veilith were tweaking the simulation, testing how the humans responded to each new condition. Excited by his discovery, Alex shared it with Mia. "They're trying to break us," he said, his voice low so only she could hear. "But if we can figure out these patterns, maybe we can anticipate what's coming next." Mia's eyes lit up with understanding. "You're saying we could turn their own test against them?" she asked. Alex nodded. "Exactly. If we know what to expect, we can prepare for it, and maybe even finish faster than they think." With renewed purpose, Alex and Mia began documenting everything. They noted when the winds picked up, how often the temperature dropped sharply, and which areas of the wasteland seemed to shift unpredictably. Their observations revealed a rhythm to the trial, a cycle of challenges designed to wear them down. Armed with this knowledge, they adjusted their strategies accordingly. When the winds grew stronger, they reinforced the shelter ahead of time. When the temperature plummeted, they layered extra insulation made from packed snow. Their efforts paid off. The group started moving through the frozen landscape with greater efficiency, conserving energy and resources. What once felt insurmountable now seemed manageable. Even those who had doubted before began to believe they might actually survive. One woman smiled weakly at Alex as she handed him a cup of moss broth. "You were right," she said quietly. "We can do this." But the Veilith weren't done yet. Just as the group began to settle into a routine, the ground beneath their feet trembled violently. Cracks spread across the ice, revealing dark water below. Panic erupted as chunks of the frozen surface broke apart, forcing everyone to scramble for solid ground. Alex shouted orders, directing people towards safer areas, while Mia helped the slower members of the group. It was chaos, but somehow they managed to stay together. When the shaking stopped, the survivors stood on a narrow ridge of ice, surrounded by open water. Ahead of them loomed a distant shoreline, faintly visible through the haze. "We have to cross," Alex said, his voice firm despite the fear in his eyes. "If we don't, we'll freeze or drown here." No one argued. They knew he was right. Unseen by the humans, the Valith exchanged uneasy looks. These creatures were proving far more resilient and intelligent than expected. Something about their ability to adapt and unite unsettled the alien observers. For the first time, doubt crept into their calculations. The uneasy truce between the two groups didn't last long. The jungle was relentless, and every day brought new challenges that tested their patience and resolve. Food was running low again, and tensions flared when a hunting party returned empty-handed. Accusations flew about who was working hard enough or hoarding supplies. Alex tried to keep the peace, but even he could feel the frustration building. Mia, on the other hand, focused her energy on finding solutions rather than dwelling on problems. She scoured the jungle for anything edible, carefully inspecting plants and insects to determine what might sustain them. One morning, as the group gathered around a dwindling fire, Mia made an announcement. "I've been studying the area," she said, holding up a handful of small berry-like fruits. "These are safe to eat, and they grow in clusters near the river. If we can set up a system to collect and store them, we won't starve." Her words were met with cautious optimism, but not everyone was convinced. "What if you're wrong?" one man asked, his voice sharp with suspicion. "We've already lost people because of bad decisions." Mia didn't back down. "I'm not wrong," she replied firmly. "But if anyone wants to double-check my work, I'll show them exactly how I tested these plants." Her confidence quieted the doubters, and soon, volunteers stepped forward to help gather food. Alex organized teams to build storage containers using bark and leaves, ensuring the berries would stay fresh longer. It was slow, tedious work, but it gave the group a sense of purpose and hope. As days turned into weeks, the jungle seemed determined to push them to their limits. Rain poured down in sheets, flooding their camp and washing away precious supplies. The predators grew bolder, attacking at night and forcing everyone to take turns keeping watch. Sleep was rare, and tempers remained high. But through it all, Alex and Mia refused to give up. They encouraged others to focus on survival rather than blame, reminding them that every challenge was another step toward finishing the trial. Then came the moment no one expected. The jungle began to change. One morning, the dense canopy overhead thinned dramatically, revealing a vast expanse of ice and snow stretching beyond the horizon. The temperature dropped sharply, and the humid air turned icy cold. Panic spread as people scrambled to adjust. Clothes soaked from the rain froze against their skin, and the ground beneath their feet became slippery with frost. "This isn't possible," someone shouted. "How does a jungle just turn into a frozen wasteland?" Alex clenched his jaw, trying to stay calm. "It's part of the test," he said. "The Valith are throwing everything they can at us to see how we adapt." Mia nodded, already scanning the environment for clues. "We need shelter and heat, fast," she said. "If we don't act quickly, we'll freeze to death." Together, they rallied the group, urging them to work together once more. Using fallen branches and layers of snow, Alex designed a rudimentary igloo-like structure to block the wind and trap body heat. Maya suggested digging trenches around the perimeter to drain melting snow and prevent flooding. Others gathered whatever dry wood they could find, desperate to start a fire. It took hours of exhausting effort, but eventually they managed to create a fragile sanctuary against the biting cold. Inside the makeshift shelter, huddled close for warmth, the group reflected on how far they'd come. They had faced starvation, predators, and now freezing temperatures, and somehow they were still alive. But the cost was clear. Some had fallen along the way, victims of exhaustion, injury, or despair. The survivors bore the weight of those losses, their faces etched with sorrow and determination. Unseen by the humans, the Valith watched intently. Their glowing eyes narrowed as they observed Alex and Mia leading the group through yet another impossible scenario. These humans were proving to be remarkably resourceful, adapting to each new environment faster than anticipated. For the first time since the trials began, doubt flickered across the alien overseers' faces. Perhaps humanity wasn't as predictable or as weak as they had assumed. The second trial began without warning. One moment, Alex, Mia, and the others were catching their breath in the desert. And the next, they found themselves standing in a dense jungle. Towering trees blocked out much of the sunlight, and the air was thick with humidity. Strange bird-like creatures called overhead, their cries echoing through the forest. The group looked around, unsure of what to expect next. But they didn't have time to think. The Valith's voice returned, cold and emotionless. "This trial will test your ability to endure conflict," the voice said. "Survival is not just about overcoming nature. It is about navigating the challenges posed by others." Before anyone could ask what that meant, the jungle seemed to come alive. Movement rustled in the underbrush, and soon, another group of humans emerged from the shadows. They looked just as tired and wary as Alex and Mia's group, but there was something different about them. A hardness in their eyes, a readiness to fight. Tensions rose immediately. The two groups stared at each other, neither willing to back down. Someone from the other group stepped forward, a tall man with broad shoulders and a scar running down his cheek. "We're not sharing anything," he growled. "You either join us or get out of our way." His words sparked an argument. Voices grew louder, accusations flew, and fists clenched. Alex stepped between the groups, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "Fighting won't help any of us survive," he said firmly. "If we work together, we'll have a better chance." Mia backed him up, her voice steady despite the chaos. "He's right. We don't know what's waiting for us in this jungle. If we waste energy fighting each other, none of us will make it." Some members of both groups hesitated, considering their words, but others weren't convinced. One woman from the rival group spat on the ground. "Talk all you want, but we're not risking our lives for strangers." The situation escalated quickly. When one man lunged at another, punches were thrown, and soon, the entire group was caught in a chaotic brawl. Alex and Mia tried to break it up, but it was no use. In the end, the fight left several people injured, and the two groups split apart, each retreating deeper into the jungle. Alex shook his head in frustration as he watched them go. "This is exactly what they want," he muttered. "They're trying to divide us." As the hours passed, the jungle proved to be more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. Predators lurked in the shadows, large, feline-like creatures with glowing eyes that stalked their every move. Poisonous plants disguised themselves as harmless shrubs, and rivers teemed with unseen dangers. Alex and Mia's group worked tirelessly to protect themselves. Using vines and fallen branches, they built traps to catch food and scare off predators. Mia's knowledge of biology came in handy when she identified which fruits were safe to eat and which would make them sick. Meanwhile, Alex used his engineering skills to create makeshift weapons and tools. Despite their efforts, the group couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, not just by the Valith, but by the other humans too. It wasn't long before they realized the rival group had set up camp nearby. At first, they tried to avoid them, but the jungle was unforgiving, and resources were scarce. Competition for food and water became fierce. Skirmishes broke out regularly, forcing Alex and Mia to constantly strategize ways to keep their group safe. One night, as everyone settled around a small fire, Mia voiced what many were thinking. "At this rate, we're going to destroy ourselves before the Valith even have to step in," she said quietly. Alex nodded, staring into the flames. "They're testing more than our strength," he replied. They're testing whether we can rise above our instincts, whether we can choose cooperation over conflict. The next morning, Alex made a bold decision. He approached the rival group alone, carrying a bundle of food and supplies. Their leader, the scared man, eyed him suspiciously. "What do you want?" he demanded. Alex placed the bundle on the ground between them. "We can't keep doing this," he said. "If we keep fighting, none of us will survive. Let's call a truce, at least until we figure out what's really going on here." For a moment, it seemed like the man might refuse. But then, after a long pause, he nodded. "Fine," he said gruffly. "But if this is a trick, you're dead." With that uneasy agreement, the two groups began working together, pooling their resources and knowledge. It wasn't perfect. They still argued and clashed, but they were stronger united than divided. Unseen by the humans, the Valith observed closely. Their expressions remained unreadable, but there was a flicker of interest in their glowing eyes. Perhaps these humans were more complex than they had anticipated. The sky above Earth turned an eerie shade of orange as a massive alien ship descended from the heavens. It was unlike anything humanity had ever seen, its surface shimmering like liquid metal under the sunlight. The vessel hovered silently in orbit, casting a shadow over entire cities. People around the world stopped what they were doing. Drivers pulled to the side of roads, workers stepped out of factories, and children stared up in awe. No one knew why these beings had come or what they wanted. But soon, everyone would find out. A voice boomed across every television, radio, and smartphone on the planet. It wasn't loud or threatening, but it carried an unmistakable authority. "We are the Valith," the voice said, "observers of civilizations across the galaxy. We have arrived to evaluate your species." The word sent shivers down spines worldwide. Evaluate. What did that mean? Before anyone could react, the message continued. "Your survival depends on your ability to endure our test, a trial designed to measure your worthiness to exist among the stars." Among those listening was Alex Carter, a young engineer living in Chicago. He sat on his couch, gripping a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. His mind raced with questions. Was this real? Could humanity really be judged by aliens? Across the country, in a small town in Texas, Mia Lopes was having similar thoughts. A biologist who spent most of her days studying ecosystems, she couldn't help but wonder if this was some kind of cosmic joke. Yet, deep down, both Alex and Mia felt a strange sense of determination. If this was happening, they would face it head-on. The Valith didn't waste time explaining further. Within minutes, beams of light shot down from the ship, scattering across the globe. These beams targeted specific individuals, pulling them off the ground and into the alien craft. Alex felt a sudden warmth envelop him as one of the beams touched his skin. For a moment, everything went white, and when he opened his eyes, he found himself standing in a vast, empty chamber aboard the Valith ship. Dozens of others stood nearby, looking just as confused as he did. Among them was Mia, her dark hair tied back in a ponytail, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Before anyone could speak, the walls of the chamber lit up with images of barren landscapes, dense jungles, and frozen wastelands. Another voice echoed through the room. "You will undergo a series of trials spanning centuries. Time within the simulation will move faster than in your reality. Each trial will test your adaptability, resilience, and morality. Fail, and you will be eliminated, not only as individuals but as a species." Alex swallowed hard. Centuries. How could anyone survive something like that? But there was no time to dwell on the details. The floor beneath them began to shift, separating them into smaller groups. When the movement stopped, Alex realized he was standing next to Mia and a handful of others. The group exchanged nervous glances before being transported again, this time to their first environment. They landed in a desolate desert, the sun blazing overhead. Sand stretched endlessly in every direction, and the air was dry and suffocating. There were no signs of water, shelter, or food. Panic started to rise among the group, but Alex quickly took charge. "We need to stay calm," he said firmly. "If we work together, we can figure this out." Mia nodded in agreement, already scanning the horizon for anything useful. As the hours passed, it became clear that survival wouldn't be easy. Some members of the group gave in to despair, while others argued about how to proceed. But Alex and Mia refused to give up. They worked tirelessly, using their skills to make the most of what little they had. By the end of the first day, or what felt like a day, they had built a makeshift shelter and located a faint trickle of water bubbling up from the sand. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep them going. Unbeknownst to them, the Valith watched closely, noting every decision, every struggle, and every triumph. They had seen countless civilizations fail these trials, crumbling under pressure or turning on each other. But there was something different about these humans, something unexpected. And though the Valith wouldn't admit it yet, they were starting to feel uneasy.